Hello and welcome today, everybody. Welcome where? Well, welcome in Hilversum, the Netherlands, at our Xebia Netherlands office in our studio. Welcome also to our webinar series, where we will ask tough questions, whether you are currently merely experimenting with AI or actually gaining value from it. So that's something today that we will discuss with a bit of a twist. So the twist today is, or the topic today will be how to organize for value. So whether you are leading a data science team, whether you are interested in AI, or whether you're super interested in ROI, today we will help you gain some practical frameworks, strategies on navigating how to go from experimentation to scalable success, and also indicate some things that can go wrong around how companies don't get value from AI. My name is Daniel van Dijk. I am the AI sales lead at Xebia Netherlands. And as you will come to expect from this series, because it's a series of webinars, it's not, we don't know how many yet, but we'll see. It's a series of webinars. This first one in the series has two smart people. And that's something that I will introduce now. Hello, Julian de Ruiter. Hello, Henk Julian. Henk, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Yeah? Maybe you can introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. I'm Henk Julian. I'm a data and AI tech lead at Xebia Data. So I build AI products and AI teams. And I've done this with clients like Heineken, Rabobank, Bol.com, and also FedEx.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Happy to have you here. Julian, how about you? How are you doing?
Fine, thank you, Daniel.
Yeah? Bit cold today. It's cold in the studio, but we'll do our best. So yeah, maybe you can introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, sure. My name is Julian de Ruiter. I'm a data and AI engineering lead at Xebia Data. And I like to focus on basically building the way of working and the platform, so the technology behind that we need to build production-ready solutions for AI and our clients.
Cool.
So a bit of focus on technology, the way of working, but also, like Henk said, the people, the teams as well.
All right. Thanks a lot for that. So to the audience at home, because it is also a live webinar, if there's any questions you'd like to ask, please pop them in the chat during the webinar. We will address them potentially at the end or get back to you afterwards, depending on the amount of questions and the type of questions. So bear with us on that one. For now, I think it's good to start. So AI or ROI, basically the title of the series. We've had the introduction slides already, so I can skip that one and dive right into the first question, which is for Henk. Why don't companies achieve any return on the investment that they do in AI projects?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's also a tough question or a hard question. Also, in my experience as for a decade of AI consulting. I think it's two things, of course. There's a lot that AI can do, but the other thing, not everything is worth doing. As you can see on the slides, it's relatively straightforward. What we've seen in the past years is that AI can do more and more, but not everything is worth doing. What we've seen, especially in the last 2 years, with the rise of ChatGPT, LLM, and Gen AI, is that there's a lot more that can be done, but not everything is valuable. We currently also see a lot of companies knocking our door saying, hey, can't you build a Gen AI agent for us? So that might be possible, but in our view, that's oftentimes where not the value lies. It's more about finding out what the issue is that you need to solve. So basically looking at what's worth doing and not necessarily what you could do.
Makes sense indeed. So people are getting over excited about the hype of AI and Gen AI sometimes.
Yeah, and it's I think it's also really hard to distinguish for people what's possible and not. So some things like having a chatbot is now relatively easy, but having a chatbot that maybe does calculation for you or giving an answer to a complex question, that's really hard. And really finding that boundary, I think that's difficult.
Large language models that take unstructured data, but also tables and graphs, which is difficult as well, right?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Astounding slide, by the way. That's a good Venn diagram there. Julian, question for you. Why are AI projects harder than normal software solutions?
So I think in general, if you look at AI solutions and compare them with normal software solutions, right? With software solutions, you normally focus on the code, right? You make changes to the code, you push out those changes, test them, see what their effect is. I think with AI solutions, you have two extra dimensions. So one is, for example, the model. That if you make changes to the model, you also maybe need to test how that affects the solution. And the same with the data side. Like if we, so maybe an example might be good.
Let's talk a bit slower for the people at home, by the way. It's
a bit slower?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So I don't know. Say you're training a computer vision solution to recognize, for example, if you're a someone who creates seeds.
Yeah, seed breeder.
Seed breeder, indeed, to discern bad seeds from good seeds. So say you want at some point add a new category of seeds, you might need to add some data to your data set, retrain the model, but also over time, if you see the model is degrading because the seeds change in terms of what they look like, then that's also another aspect that you need to take into account. So it's not just versioning your code, so to say, but also like how tracking what changes do we need to make to our model and how we manage it over time. And the same for data as well. So if we have changes to our data, how does it affect the model? Do we need to collect new data if we have new situations arising? Those kind of things.
So AI is more difficult maybe than software development because not only you have your code, but you also have your model and your data to be able to track. And there's 3 variables in this picture, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Another examples maybe like demand forecasting for a supermarket chain. So say you have a POC working or a solution working at multiple supermarkets and you want to scale it out over the country. Well, if you just have the software for a point of sale system, well, that's already complex. You have to add more SKUs, so more products. So that's one thing. But if you want to predict future demand, there's of course also different dynamics. So it's different whether a supermarket is located in a city or in a small village. So all those kind of things now certainly start to have an impact on the whole solution.
And this can change over time potentially, right? So that makes it difficult as well. Makes sense. So Henk, why are we talking about this now? I mean, AI has been around for years already. Is this still relevant? Haven't we figured it out yet as an industry?
Yeah, so apparently not. So I think that's why we have this webinar. And as I said before, we see it now again with customers coming out to us asking about agents that they want to have implemented. And I think it's of course not weird. It's something we also seen in the past decade. There's a new technology, so there's a new technology push in things that we might be able to do or things people want to do. Yeah, and there's what everybody's also seen in the last 2 years. There's a totally new business model of suddenly open up with OpenAI, with models can generate images, text, all this kind of stuff. So people see a lot of potential, and it's there, but it's unclear how you can actually do it. So I think that's one big trend. Now we can do something new, but we don't know how to use it yet. So is it an agent? Is it parsing tables out of PDFs to get information? That's something I think we still need to find out.
And
but
I think it's also very technology driven, right? So people are just trying things because the technology enables it, but it doesn't make everything necessarily a good idea if you're focusing on value.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So
maybe
yeah.
To interrupt, and I think the second trend that's often overlooked is that indeed we've now been building solutions, AI solutions for a decade. Back in the day when it was still stitched together with duct tape and bubble gum. And nowadays we know how to build these solutions. So I think there's a lot of solutions built where we don't know whether there's still value or where we now think we should rebuild them or make them simpler. So there's also a second trend where I think a lot of companies looking at tighter budgets and they have to evaluate their landscape and see, okay, what's still valuable and what not.
So that basically applies to both companies dabbling with AI in the first steps, where it's like, well, how can we do this thing? We have huge ideas, a huge amount of them as well. How do we get value from that? But at the same time, there's also the large organizations that have a portfolio of AI use cases potentially in production, costing a lot of cloud spend, costing a lot of maintenance, things like that. And they're like, okay,
How can we do more with less? Yes.
do more with less? Is that the new trend? All right. Maybe let's illustrate some of these problems with the next slide.
Yeah, so I think, a typical project, you can divide up into 3 phases, as you can see on the slide. So design, build, and improve. During design, the focus should really be on understanding the problem at hand, getting quick feedback on possible solutions, and then you basically know what you should focus on.
So that's basically, if you're a company and you're, for instance, with Gen AI, there's a lot of people that have ideas. Finance has ideas, marketing has ideas, everybody has ideas, and they're running for resources to build a proof of concept, basically. And it's about how do you design, like where to put your time into, and do that in an efficient manner.
Yeah, exactly. And what you typically see there is that, as we've discussed before, there's a lot of technology push, so people mostly focus on the hype about what they would like to have fixed, and in the end, a lot of these things end up in disappointment. So they don't get what they want, or they find out that they should have taken a different approach.
We don't want disappointment.
No.
No. So that's the design phase.
Yeah, then over to the build phase. So you enter the design phase with a wireframe, a prototype, so something you put in your user's hands, but it's actually not ready for production, so something you should not really keep on using. So that's why you have a separate phase where we start building that out. So there's a lot more engineering, and that's also, I think, where you see some of the bigger costs. So I think that's something you can illustrate if you
Julian.
seen that a lot.
Yeah, so I've seen that quite a lot of clients where, well, like Henk said, from the design phase, we have a bit of a prototype, right? And then comes the question, like, how do we then build this into a more production-ready solution that can actually face end users, right? And this is typically a phase where you can spend a lot of time, months even, when going from the hacky POC, so to say, into the production-ready solution, because it's unclear what the requirements are or what the platform is. It has to be secure. It has to scale well. So all these kind of things.
For the audience, so you mean you start off with a proof of concept,
yes,
to demonstrate the technical working of the solution, then potentially prototype to show that it has some business value.
Yes,
maybe even an MVP, showing that it has bring it to production with business value. That's basically the 3 steps, I think, right? To build something into a fully fledged productionized solution.
Yeah, so I would just say, but correct me if I'm wrong, Henk, but from build, I would expect a POC coming from the design phase, and then we build that out maybe into the first viable solution, so the MVP in the build phase.
Right.
And then we go to the final phase, like the improve phase, where then we start collecting feedback on the performance of the solution, of the value it actually adds, and try to feed that back into further improvements we can make to iterate on the solution. So going from MVP to version 2, 3.
Right. So to summarize, basically, if I understand correctly, right, so the design phase is about ideation, refining a use case, and then building a proof of concept, demonstrating that this thing technically works, basically. Maybe also that it has some initial business value. During the build phase, you're going to build an MVP, or maybe a fully productionalized solution of the thing, and then show that it provides value, and there you have that. And then, of course, that's not done yet, because you want to continually improve, because the world will change overnight, and you want to keep on being agile in that regard. So that's basically the 3 steps here. Last time we spoke, I think also you said something around the build phase about a production gap as well. Can you illustrate that for the audience?
Yeah, so that's kind of the gap I tried to illustrate a bit before, like that you have the production, so this POC can be anything, right? It can be something that runs your laptop, or at least just the minimal that you need to show something as value. But then to actually embed it in a solution that faces users, then we have to make it secure, we have to make it scale, we have to make sure it runs somewhere in the cloud probably, and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
And for teams, that's a very big step, going from something that runs on your laptop to something that's scalable and running in the cloud.
Is this something that businesses often understand up front?
No, I think often it's underestimated. Well, so like the less mature companies, they often underestimate it in my opinion.
Yeah.
The more mature companies, they do see this as a big problem, but still there are different approaches, ways on how they approach it. So something you also see at say the less mature clients sometimes is that they, for example, they develop a solution inside the team and then they hand it over to IT, for example, to productionize. And then IT spends months doing something, building the solution without consulting the original team. And then you might end up with something in production, but it takes a long time and it's super hard to iterate on, right? Because someone else built it. As the original designer, I don't know how it's built, so I can't really contribute to improving it anymore either.
Right. So that's the gap. You have the to bring stuff to production requires a lot of effort, a lot of different steps involving also IT, but if possible in a very seamless way, and not as two different teams altogether.
Yeah. So either there's a handover between two teams, or there's a very big gap in terms of knowledge on how to get from POC to the production-ready solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Maybe about improve, right? So what can you tell us about that? The problems that we see there in the improve stage.
So there I've seen two kind of problems, I think, or more, but at least two kinds. One is, for example, where basically you spend a lot of time building this production-ready solution. We deploy it somewhere in production, and then we forget about it. Like because we had a project, we built it, we're done, right? So then it's running somewhere, but people have no idea on the terms of how much value does it really add for the company. But also how well does it perform in general, like from an engineering perspective. So there people often forget to do like this feedback cycle, like we built something, okay, how valuable is it actually for our end users?
And does that also lead to business problems actually, or is it more like a perfectionist thing?
No, I think, well, if your users are unhappy, right, because it's not performing, then it's just going to be another useless component you're running in your landscape, which is costing money but not really adding any value. So I would say, yeah, definitely it can affect how users experience your product.
Anything to add, Henk?
Yeah, I think this is also something we've seen in the whole data field, especially also around dashboarding. So I think it's also sort of a meme or a trope that nobody has dashboards that looks at the statistics of all the dashboards, so nobody knows which dashboard is being used. There's a lot of these dashboards, data models that are there, but they never get killed. They never get removed. It only grows and grows and grows. And I think we've seen this question now through the whole data discipline, where, as I said before, budgets are getting tighter. They're harmonizing data platforms. Instead of having different data platforms in a company, they now try to get one or two. And then there's the question, there's so many solutions, which ones should we keep and which ones should we kill? And I think that's a really relevant problem. And I think also a really tough problem, combined that there's a lot of talent moving between companies. So someone may have built this 2 years ago, but most likely that person is now on a different journey in their career. So who knows if this thing is still valuable and how it has been built.
And I heard something about AI portfolio management. Is that a thing these days?
Yeah, so I think it's popping up. We're getting more questions, and it's not my expertise, not my authority, but it's something that will be covered in the next webinar.
Ooh, plugging the next one already. Like it. But okay, so looking at this, right, it seems like there is not really a silver bullet yet. We have different solutions. We have different maturity levels, different sizes of companies, different stages of projects. The way we do this within Xebia Data, often we like to try to simplify it in 3 buckets with, again, 3, not design, build, improve this time, but people, process, technology. How would you introduce that into this whole situation?
Good question. Yeah, and it's like our standard consulting pillar. So let's maybe first go on build. I think the most important there is the process. So not tooling, not necessarily people, really the process. I think here it's really good, or here you should really focus on validating your understanding of the problem and a potential solution that you have. And I think, that's a process that's already exists. It has been used for quite some while, and I think what's worked for us really good is the design sprint. So it can be a design week, or it can be a design 3 days, whatever, but the limited amount of time, you go to the full cycle of building a prototype and getting feedback on that in multiple times. And we've done this at many clients. We've been doing it now for Gen AI in the past year quite often, and we've had, I think, a lot of great results. If I can sort of think back of the old days of doing data science 8 years ago, we would spend 2 months on a POC, try to build the first maybe prototype, and that was basically it. We would know if something was possible, and then we would ask to the business, hey, is this valuable or not? I think nowadays with the tech that we have and an understanding of the technology as well and how we should apply it and all the components that we have, within a week we can sketch things out, get something on drawing board, get feedback on that, and have an understanding, okay, is this a potential solution or that? Or not?
And that also includes ideation, refinement of the use case.
Yeah, indeed. So
say you're a business and you have like, you want to please marketing, you want to please finance, you want to please a lot of different stakeholders that all want their own Gen AI use case.
Yeah.
You could say, let's do an ideation workshop, something like that, basically align with what are the top prioritized use cases.
Yeah, I think that's a precursor for this. So you do the whole ideation phase, you find out where the biggest value is, and then you say, okay, this is like the area where we're focusing on finance with this specific problem.
Yeah.
In this design week or sprint, you first start mapping out the problem, of course. What is it? What are the users' needs? What is the context? What are potential solutions? Then you start building. So it's also shown on the slide. You start sketching things out, making sure you understand the workflow.
Yeah.
Go through a process of deciding what to improve, build it, get a feedback, and going back.
Basically refining the use case before building a prototype.
Yeah.
And in refining this use case, you want to align on what are the functional and non-functional requirements, and basically also what do you need in order to build this prototype from the customer.
Yeah, and build it as well. So you want to sketch it out. And I think we had a great story with a large bank where we did an underwriting process or underwriting project, and I think in 3 days, we had like a prototype ready where that users could use and see if this is something for that. So I think that's, if you look at the timelines that we can now validate an ID, that's way shorter than we could do before. And I think this design week or design sprint is a really good tool to tackle that.
So to summarize, we were talking about how to simplify this whole madness of models, and you added a new one over here. But so it's about the design phase, not the build or improve phase. And in this design phase, the most important one of the people, process, technology would be basically this process right here, the design sprint, to be able to take a list of ideated use cases, say this one is what we're going to run with, the area of the area of value potentially, and we're going to refine it. We're going to build a prototype, and we're going to see through user testing whether this is something that people are happy with or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the design phase, and it's the process.
Yeah, it's mostly the process. Yeah. I think you can do this nowadays on your laptop, as Julian said. You can do it in the cloud, you can do it whatever. And I think that technology is also become so accessible that a lot of people can do this. You don't need to be a data science unicorn. There's a lot of people who can build a prototype.
Technology as an enabler, but not as something that is crucial. The process is crucial. So that's this one. Julian, how about the second phase? So that's all about building. So I would say that would be the tech, right? That's the most important aspect.
Well, I think tech is an important part of the build phase, but what I also think is very important is the people part as well, because we've always seen a lot that clients also in the past, right, is that they had teams of data scientists, so they were good at maybe at doing the design, building the initial POC, but then moving that from the design phase into production, so actually building the solution, that was then more of a problem because they don't necessarily have all the skills in that team to build a full production-ready solution, where you might need software development skills, knowledge of the cloud, machine learning engineering skills. So you need a mix of skills essentially to make the build phase a real success.
And this comes back to basically the different steps that you outlined earlier when it comes to the build phase, that you need to be able to create a cloud environment, the right security compliance, you mentioned a lot of other things, right? But this is all about people being able to support those requirements in building something that is production grade within medium to large organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. Key here is also having that in your product team, right? So the team that's responsible for building a certain product or solution, they should have this right mix of skills that in the technical landscape that you have in the company, that they can take this idea and build an actual solution out of it.
All right.
And if maybe to illustrate this, I think this is also what we've seen on our academy side. So we not only consult, but we also teach. And I think one of our most popular trainings in the last few years has been those trainings that helped transition data scientists to machine learning engineers, to teach them those skills. And I think data scientists themselves realized that, they knew how to build a prototype, but now they had to learn how to engineer. And I think that's really where you see in the numbers in our sales, you can see where the value is and what the biggest issue was, or the biggest thing that need to be fixed, and it was people skills.
More engineering capacity, basically skills within the data science team to be able to take this prototype and build a production grade version of it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I guess that's then the third phase now, improve, right? So looking at improve, what Julian would be the one there?
So yeah, I think there are also multiple things important here, but an important one here is process, I think. Because like what I said earlier, right? As an engineer, you tend to build something, you deploy it, and then you forget about it. So then I think here it's very important to realize that you're responsible for not just building the solution, but also running it and maintaining it. So there needs to be a proper process there where you also get the proper feedback, so you get the proper metrics or value measurement, for example, so that you can actually see, like, how are people using my product? How is it being perceived? Are things going wrong? Those kind of things, and that you can then actively use that to feed back into your build phase, for example, to improve your solution or add new features. Or
and looking at companies that you worked with, right? How tight is this circle, right? Because you build something, it's in production, and then you want to improve it. Is that something that is done a lot? I mean, can you put a number on it?
That's a good question. So what I have seen is that sometimes companies get nervous, right? Because it's a production environment, it's might have sensitive data and these kind of things. So what you sometimes see is that there was like a split where you have like an operations team which is maybe doing this kind of thing, which is separate from the product team, and that makes it difficult to act on these kind of metrics if you're not allowed to see them, right? So I think there I have seen quite a few examples where closing this gap, so making sure that your product team can actually get the feedback, makes it much more effective because they're the ones who can act on it.
Okay. Anything to add, Henk? A no is also good.
No, I think it's that's that.
I think there's one that we're missing here, right? So we talk a lot about how process is essential to design phase, basically the design sprint as we discussed. We talked also about the build phase, where it's about people and the skills to be able to underpin all the requirements that it takes to bring something to production. And then there's, of course, the improve phase, and I hear you say it's process again, right? But we say people, process, technology. So where's the technology? I mean, probably there's some techies following this webinar as well, right? So maybe can you tell us a bit about that, Julian?
Yes, I think technology is, of course, important across all three of the phases, but we typically see this more as an enabler than something you should focus on just for the technology, right? And so maybe to give a bit of an illustration, so I think if you look at the design phase, like Henk said, there you want to quickly iterate on different things and try out different solutions to see what works. Well, from the technology angle, it's of course really crucial to have an environment where you have easy access to the data, where you can quickly try out new different things, try to building different prototypes and showing them or sharing them with your clients as well, right? Or your users as well.
Yeah, okay. Anything to add there?
I think this part of this technology is something we've also already had, and it was also, I think, the big boom in data science, that we were always able to quickly prototype with our Jupyter notebooks, with all the techie tools we had, creating hacky solutions. And I think that's also something we now really can do, is create simple UIs, interfaces. I think that's the key thing that you want to make something visual.
Yeah. And then we've also seen at clients like actually building such a solution and then sharing it with one of the end users also gives a lot of feedback in terms of like what does work well and what doesn't work well.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've done a project at a big trading firm, and we had to start a project making sure the traders had more data on how to make a trade. And yeah, it's of course hard to get traction for people because they have to change their ways of working. And I think this is also really where a prototype can help, and that you have an environment where you can easily create an application that they can then use. And I think this was sort of key in our project, that we could make it tangible what this new initiative would look like and how they could interact with. And I think we had feedback within our first or second, third week, and that's something you often don't have at traditional projects that go that quick.
So the feedback could be positive, it could also be negative.
Yeah, of course.
And if it's negative, probably that comes back to the whole kill your darlings thing. You want to be able to say, well, this is maybe not a good idea, but at least you say that in a validated way, and you don't have a huge investment already sunk into it.
Yeah.
I like it. So real experimentation based, basically.
Yeah. And if you don't have this flexible environment, then it takes you weeks to come up with a new prototype, and this is a very slow process, of course. So that's why you want to be able to do this quickly.
All right. One of the terms that I'm not hearing in this webinar is ML Ops. Is that something that is encompassed? Because it feels like ML Ops goes through all these different things a bit. Is that a different question? Rephrase?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I think before the Gen AI hype, there was also the MLOps hype. I think if you really sort of try to cut through what it was in the bare essence, in the essence, it was all about making sure people had responsibility or ownership of the solution, and they would try to improve it in the way that was seen fit or how you do it. And that was also on the axis of process, people, and technology. And I think in MLOps is part of all this, so it's making sure you do something that's valuable in the build phase. It's make sure that you build something right in the build phase, and it's about iteratively improving that. So I think that's how we would relate it to MLOps.
Like quickly getting feedback as well, and iteratively improving on that.
And I think you also have some examples on how something like an MLOps platform can help in the build phase, right?
Yeah. Yes, I think that's especially, like you said, in the build phase, where you want to go towards a production-ready solution. This adds a lot of complexity as well. Like I've seen at one of our clients, we specifically had the objective that we saw that some user teams were taking 6 months or a year or something to move from the POC to a production-ready solution. And we wanted to have a platform basically with the right tooling available that we could reduce this from a year or 6 months down to, let's say 2 weeks, for example, that you could take a POC and in 2 weeks have it in a safe and solid solution as part of your product, so to say. And that's where a platform can be a good enabler, like making sure you have the right tools, the right technology. And we also put a lot of effort then into building what's called a golden path, or what we call a golden path, where we basically for different types of solutions then also had clear guidelines and templates on how you can build those solutions on top of the platform that we had. Also again, to enable teams to more quickly develop
So I guess that's where the ROI hook also comes in, right? Because it sounds like building these platforms and instilling these golden paths does not come without any investment.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, if you say that you were at a customer and where it first took them like a year to bring a use case to production, 6 months to a year, and then you brought it down to weeks, I think being able to add that form of speed in your time to value for your use cases can be super helpful for organizations looking to speed up their AI.
Yeah, and it also depends a bit on your scale and maturity as well, right? Like if you have one team, it might not make sense to spend a year on building a platform, but you might either want to make it simpler or maybe buy it instead.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst if you're a larger tech company with a lot of different data science teams with very specific needs, then it might make more sense to invest into things like this.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So we have our white paper, ML Ops Beyond the Hype. As Henk said earlier, it was a hype a few years ago, and these days it's a nice practice that we have a nice webinar of a white paper on. I think if you'll download this through the QR code, you will see a number of the models we've already discussed today in this white paper. And that brings us to the tail end of this webinar. So we've discussed a lot. I think it started out with the, let's do it one more time, this beautiful Venn diagram where, yeah, basically you want to find that right in the middle, AI and ROI. And in order to do so, really look at like the people, the process, and the technology aspects of walking through the design, build, and improve phases in the right way, making the right decisions with the right people, the right processes, and underpinning it with helpful technology that is getting better and better and easier to use to bring value to your organization with AI. Is that am I missing anything in that summary, gentlemen?
No.
No? All right. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank everyone logging in later on. If you have any questions, if you have anything you'd like to reach out to, if you scan this QR code over here, it's the second and last QR code of this slide deck, you can connect with us and we can help you out, answer anything you have. So feel free to do so. And then finally, because I said, AI or ROI, it's a webinar series. We already have a next one planned as well. So really exciting to look forward to for us. Friday, the 29th of November at 3 o'clock Central European time, we will discuss how to measure value. Julian has said it a couple of times in this webinar already, where measuring value is something that you really want to instill within the build and certainly also the improve phases. And that's not as easy as we all think it is. And that's something that Steven Nooyen, our head of data strategy, and Jetse Schuurmans, our machine learning engineer, who's working on really cool Gen AI stuff at a large bank currently, will join us for and talk about. So stay tuned for that one. You can see it on our website. For now, I would say thanks a lot for all the attention and time, and see you next time. Bye-bye.